Hey guys, this is Doug with Fellowship of the Martyrs. I haven't made a video for a week or so right now. Been trying to be quiet and listen to the Lord under a lot of attack on this end, but none of it's sticking, and the Lord continues to prevail. Um, Lately, we've had an increasing rash of people making accusations. Um, against me personally in the ministry and people that are here. Um, I know that people on YouTube watch sometimes some of the. If you've been watching since I put the channel up 4 years ago or something, you've seen attacks come and go, and then they blow over, or the people recant, or their videos get pulled down, or they pull them down themselves, or whatever. And we've taken a lot of nonsense from a lot of people, excuse me. And once in a while, I'll, for the sake of the baby sheep that don't have discernment enough just to ask the Lord if I'm okay and I'm with him, sometimes I'll respond when the Lord leads. Mostly we just let it go and let it play out and let the Lord do whatever. But I have been clear from the Lord that the spirit of Judas is something that we're going to deal with till he comes back. And that's just the way it is. He was never free of it. All the way up to the cross, and even at the cross, people that said they love him weren't standing with him. And pretty much his mom and the Apostle John is, about it at the foot of the cross. Peter denied him, Judas betrayed him, whatever. So, if you are obeying the Lord, you're going to need to expect this. You're going to need to expect that somebody close to you will turn against you. Maybe the members of your own family will try to kill you and think they're doing God a favor. That's what Jesus said it would be like. The members of your own house. So when you see somebody that's serving the Lord and members of their house are turning against them, just stop for a minute and use a little discernment and seek the Lord about if the members of their house are turning against them because they're obeying God and God said it would be like that, or because they're legitimately whacked and they need to be exposed. The test is going to be the fruit, not what people say, what people do. Not how many books they've sold, not how big their congregation is, not how much noise they can make. The test is always the fruit. And that's covered in Galatians 5. Peace, patience, joy, gentleness, kindness, self-control, on and on. Love. Love. Who's operating in love and who's not? Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at love. I got a long way to go to um, to manifest the fullness of the love of God. But I love pretty good, and I sure love a lot better than I used to. Praise God. And all I know how to do when the warfare increases, when accusations are flying, uh, all I really know how to do is double down, push all the chips out onto the table, and bet it on God. I'm not going to try to get people to like me. I'm not going to try to convince people um, by compromise that there's no negotiating with accusers and railers. Um, you just plow forward, doing what you've been doing, and trust God to back you up. Um, so I'm going to double down on some stuff. Um, People give me trouble and say things like God would never destroy marriage. God would never tell people to get divorced. God would never, whatever. And I show scriptural examples of where God did exactly that. Then they accuse me of saying, God might tell me to molest my children, God might tell me to murder somebody, God might tell me to commit suicide, drink the Kool-Aid, God might whatever. That's not what I meant. But if you say God would never, and I can show you biblical examples of where God did do that, then you ought to rethink that particular God would never. Anyway, one of the arguments is that marriages are for life, that God would never tear them apart, God would never have them divorce. You could not possibly be hearing God if God told you to divorce. Okay, I've shown biblical examples of that in the Bible, where he ended marriages, like Ezekiel's killed his wife that night, or Abigail's killed her husband because, anyway, and clearly she was the spiritual head of the family. In Ezra, where he had a whole bunch of people divorce their wives and put them away, and where God himself divorced Israel a couple of times, wrote her a bill of divorcement. Divorce is a contract. Both parties are expected to keep up their side of the contract. God provides ways to get out of that contract in the Bible, in the law of Moses. Yes, those are for hardened hearts, but the whole world is fallen, and all law is for people with hardened hearts. We wouldn't need laws about murder or stealing except for hardened hearts, but here we are. That's not the way it was in the garden. That's not the way it was from the beginning. That's not Jesus' heart, and we probably won't need any of that during the millennial reign of Christ and in the eternal kingdom, but right now, Moses provided a way, and Jesus endorsed it. He said not one jot or tittle of the law will pass away. He did not come to change or modify the law of Moses and do away with parts of it, in the sense that those things are no longer valid. Anyway, I have said that a lot of people are not in the relationships they're supposed to be in. They didn't ask the Lord, or they specifically disobeyed the Lord and were told not to marry somebody and they did anyway. Or, one reason or another, people aren't walking it out, people aren't obeying, and in order for us to get ready for what's coming, he is reshuffling the deck. People have told me God would never do that. Well, I'm going to read a word from Glenda Lomax. She is YouTube user Texas Author 1, has a blog talk radio show and written a couple of books, and someone that I respect. And she just posted a couple days ago this word on her wingsofprophecy.blogspot.com. And I'm just going to read this for you. Thursday, March 15th, 2012. Unions not of me. She says, I was listening on the phone to a friend talking about recent changes in her marriage this week and how she and her husband went from almost filing for divorce to attending church together and the new love that was blossoming between them as a result, when the Lord showed me something in my spirit. He showed me that he is shaking the marriages where there is a true believer that is yoked with one who believes little or not at all, and he is shaking them hard, so that the one who does not really believe or is in unbelief will either start following him or the believer will be set free. Later that night in worship, he spoke this word to me. This is her quote from the Lord. Relationships will be tried by fire in this time. What is not of me shall not survive the test of my refining fire. In what is coming, your unions must be pure. Many of you will experience loss in this time of refining. Know that I will restore to my people what is rightfully theirs, and cause you to increase more besides. I am causing unbelievers to choose now. I have come to set my people free in this time from all that keeps them from serving me with their whole hearts. I will now remove the obstacles and move my people strategically into position for that which is very soon to come. Unions not of me cannot withstand the storm that is coming. Do not be surprised when you see long-standing unions crumble overnight, for this is my mighty hand. I am preparing you, my people. I will care for you in times to come. Have no fear, for I am a loving and faithful Father. Many of you shall fear as events planned begin to come to pass. But these things must come that my name might be glorified in all the earth before my sons soon return. And she quotes Psalm 127:1, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain." 2 Corinthians 6:14, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness?" Sorry. Excuse me, man, I was up late. "And what communion hath light with darkness?" Malachi 3:2 and 3, "But who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness." Joel 2:25, "And I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten, the cankerworm and the caterpillar, the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you." Psalm 23:3, "He restoreth my soul, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake." Okay, again, that's from wingsofprophecy.blogspot.com. Okay, now, Glinda's very well respected. I mean, there's people out there that say mean things about her too, praise God. But even some of the people that are firing at me quote her to defend their position, and I can assure you she does not want to be quoted to defend your position. There are other voices that are beginning to hear what I've been saying all along, that there is going to be a reshuffling. In order to get everything in proper alignment, there are people that are not in alignment, and God is going to shuffle things. Now, sometimes it will happen in a way that the world would say, absolutely, okay? We have one sister here who was beat up, seriously beat up physically, repeatedly, and I don't know any pastor anywhere that would have told her, you know, that she should have stayed. By all rights, she should have called the police and he should be in jail many times over. She remained because of raw, naked terror from religious spirits that had whispered to her before that she had to take that from him. I believe that you have left the covenant when you set your needs to beat someone above their needs not to be beaten. You cannot say that you are loving, honoring, protecting, guarding, providing for when you are beating your wife. I think that contract's void. I don't have any problem with that. Now, the Lord may say, and could say, I want you to stay. You got yourself into this. You took a vow. I told you not to. You're not supposed to be here, but you stay. I've seen him do that. Pray for reconciliation or whatever. And the Lord could say, he's not going to go. We're done. Take half the money out of the bank, get a bus ticket, and go. He could do that. Now, I think it's a reasonable discussion to have. And nobody wants to seem to have this discussion with me. They will talk endlessly in seminary about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, or who wrote the book of Hebrews, or whatever. But they don't want to have this talk with me. They don't want to sit down and say, okay, what do we do as Christians, as believers and followers of Christ, that have the seal of God on our forehead, when the unbelieving wife that we have stayed with and prayed for and believed that maybe someday she would be saved, what do we do when she takes the mark of the beast? And God says, that's it. There's no hope. She's lost forever. You're done. Could God say, when people start taking the mark of the beast, could God say, that's it. You're not married to her anymore. You're released. You're no longer under bondage. We're moving on. I want you with that person now. because you need a helpmate to go through what's coming. Could God do that? I think he could. I think he will. If you've seen the movie Defiance about the Jews that were out in the woods during World War II, there was a pocket of Jews that actually resisted and survived, thousands of them that survived out in the woods as a kind of an armed resistance. And probably tens of thousands of descendants of theirs now that survived and didn't go to the camps. But there's all kinds of accommodations that have to happen when you're in a killing field. And this guy dies, that girl dies, bammo. Okay, next day you might be with somebody else for pure necessity to manage the house, feed the kids, do whatever is necessary. So I'm doubling down on this, and I'm going to say, thus saith the Lord. Everything that I've heard, everything that's led me up to this point, is that I am not talking about the accusations that are made against me, that you get to just keep trading up until you find a pure, spotless bride. I've never said anything like that. I've never said that you get to rotate at will or that you get a say in it whatsoever. What I've said is it's possible that God will tear apart a marriage that looks to us like it might even be okay. But he knows the heart, and he knows what's really in there. And he knows who's a believer and who's not a believer. And every revivalist in history has believed that maybe 2% of the people that claim Christ are actually saved. So the vast majority of when we say, well, divorce rates are 50% in the church and as bad or worse than they are in the world, you got to understand we're talking about the world in both cases. If 2% of the people sitting in the pews are actually saved, then the other 98% are just the world doing what the world does. And there's a whole bunch of the 2% that are married to the 98% that say they're Christians and aren't. And the Lord is shaking them. And some marriages will be better than ever and stronger than ever, and they'll seek the Lord together, and the things that they have to go through financially, relationally, illnesses, or whatever the Lord does to shake and to test and refine them, will put them on their knees, and they will be stronger than ever. And some, they'll shake loose. They'll shake loose. And the Lord may say to stay single, and the Lord may say, okay, now I want you with this person. And the faster the world moves toward the end, the faster everything's going to go. There was a day, maybe your husband dies, you mourn for a year before you get remarried. My dad, after my mom died, she outlived the doctor's predictions by several years with cancer. They thought they gave her 2 years. She lived 6. They'd already said goodbye. They'd already gone through the grieving years before, and she just stubbornly refused to die because she's really tough cookie. And she left a list of the top 10 women my dad should marry after she died. And he married number 2 on the list 3 months after she passed. They already knew each other. She was already friends with my mom. They weren't dating ahead of time. They weren't messing around. But there was already something there that the Lord could build on. And my mom didn't have any beef with it. Her family freaked out because, dear sweet Nancy, you should have waited at least a year. You know, this is too fast. You must not have really loved her, you know, whatever. But they had already reconciled. They had already done everything, said everything they needed to say. The Lord may split people up by killing one of them. That's what he did with Ezekiel. But there's other ways to prove that you're not a believer and to prove that God was right in separating something and releasing someone from you. It's all about the fruit. If a person takes matters into their own hands, does everything they can do to control and manipulate, to lie, to slander, to destroy, then they prove that that was in their heart all along. They prove that they weren't as loving, They weren't as committed. They weren't as true as they said all along. There's a lot of ways to beat your wife, and only some of them are physical. And when you do that, you prove that you've broken covenant. And the Lord may tell her to stick it out and pray and hope and take it for the team, and the Lord may say, nope, that's it. I've had it. I'm done. So, my thus saith the Lord is that this is going to happen more. By the measure you judge, you'll be judged. And if you insist this can't happen, and that your marriage is exempt from it, and that God would never, it's entirely possible it'll land on you just to prove it to you, just to show you. But I predict a massive, massive reshuffling of marriages across the world, across denominations, across all kinds of groups that are hearing God. I take no joy in it, except that if it's God's will, then it's necessary. And if we're on the front lines, if the geese are flying in formation, the wind is going to hit the ones in front first. But eventually they're all going to feel it. And I think everybody's going to feel it. And I think this is going to happen more. And I think other voices like Glenda's are speaking that they're hearing it's coming too. And they're seeing it. And pastors that I know seeing more divorces than they've ever seen before. Some of it's flesh, some of it's selfishness, some of it's people wanting a younger model, whatever it could be. But I think it's real dangerous to assume that that's the motivation in everybody's heart all the time. Especially if it's God. And her word, the word Glenda spoke, said, do not be surprised when you see long-standing unions crumble overnight, for this is my mighty hand. He can do that. He is doing it, and I'm prophesying publicly that he's going to do a lot more of it before this is over. Take it or leave it, like it or don't, say what you want about me, but we'll see. We'll see if God backs me up in the end. Thanks for listening. Pray for the bride, pray for the remnant, pray that they'll endure all the hatred and ugliness and persecution that's coming, the reshuffling of their life. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. You better get that in your heart. You better learn to mean it. In the name of Jesus.